Ah, rock and roll. The music that moved us, shook us and spoke to our souls. The driving beat, the raw energy, the lyrics that echoed the dreams and frustrations of generations. It was more than just music. It was a movement, a cultural shift that resonated deeply with the youth of the time. But where did this powerful sound come from? What were the origins of this electrifying genre that took the world by storm? How did it all begin? To understand rock and roll, we must delve into its roots, tracing back to the influences that shaped its unique sound. Let's turn back the clock, journey through time and explore the roots of this iconic genre. The story of rock and roll is a tapestry woven from various musical traditions and cultural influences. Our story begins in the mid-20th century, a time of great change and innovation in the world of music. In the heart of America, a melting pot of cultures and a convergence of rhythms were brewing something extraordinary. The bustling cities and small towns alike were alive with the sounds of jazz, blues, country and gospel music, each contributing to the birth of rock and roll. A melting pot of cultures, a convergence of rhythms and a yearning for something new. The youth were eager for a sound that was their own, something that spoke to their experiences and aspirations. They found it in rock and roll, a genre that broke the mold and defied conventions. It was a sound that was raw, rebellious and full of life. The world was ready for a revolution, a sonic boom that would change music forever. This was not just a new genre. It was a new way of thinking, a new way of being. It wasn't just one artist or one song. It was a collective movement, a fusion of styles that brought together the best elements of different musical traditions. It was a fusion of styles, a tapestry woven from the threads of earlier genres. Blues, jazz, country and gospel all played a part in creating the unique sound of rock and roll. It was a fusion of styles, a tapestry woven from the threads of earlier genres. Each note, each beat carried the legacy of the past while forging a path to the future. This was the dawn of rock and roll, a genre born from the spirit of rebellion, the desire for self-expression and the universal language of music. It was a sound that transcended boundaries, connecting people across cultures and generations. It was a unifying force, bringing together diverse communities through the power of music. A genre born from the spirit of rebellion, the desire for self-expression, and the universal language of music. It was a sound that transcended boundaries and the universal language of music. It was a sound that transcended boundaries, connecting people across cultures and generations. It was a sound that transcended boundaries, connecting people across cultures and generations. Rock and roll became a global phenomenon, influencing countless artists and shaping the course of music history. Connecting people across cultures and generations, it was more than just music. It was a revolution, a movement that continues to inspire and resonate with people around the world to this day. To truly understand rock and roll, we must first venture into the depths of the blues. This journey takes us back to the early 20th century, where the seeds of this profound genre were sown. This soulful genre, born from the struggles and sorrows of African Americans in the rural South, became the bedrock upon which rock was built. The blues emerged from the cotton fields, the juke joints, and the front porches, where stories of hardship and resilience were shared through song. The blues, with its raw emotion, its tales of hardship and hope, its haunting melodies, provided the emotional depth and musical framework. The 12-bar blues structure, the call and response patterns, and the use of blue notes created a sound that was both deeply personal and universally relatable. Legendary blues musicians like Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters and B.B. King and Howlin' Wolf poured their hearts into their music, their voices resonating with pain and resilience. Their songs spoke of life's trials and tribulations, of love lost and found, and of the indomitable human spirit. The blues was not just music, it was a way of life, a means of expression for those who had few other outlets. Rock and roll embraced these elements, incorporating the blues' signature 12-bar structure, its emotive storytelling, and its powerful rhythms. The influence of the blues can be heard in the early rock and roll hits of artists like Chuck Berry and Elvis Presley. Its use of slide guitar and harmonica, instruments that added a distinctive mournful sound, became staples in rock music. The slide guitar in particular allowed for a fluid, vocal-like quality that could convey deep emotion. And its deeply personal lyrical themes, often reflecting the struggles and triumphs of everyday life, resonated with audiences around the world. The blues' honesty and rawness provided a template for rock musicians to explore their own emotions and experiences. The spirit of the blues, its raw passion and honesty, became an integral part of rock's DNA. As rock and roll evolved, it continued to draw from the wellspring of the blues, ensuring that the soul of this genre would live on in every power chord, every guitar solo, and every heartfelt lyric. But the story doesn't end with the blues. Jazz, that other great American art form, also played a pivotal role in shaping the sound of rock. With its emphasis on improvisation, its complex rhythms, and its virtuoso musicianship, jazz brought a sense of freedom and experimentation to the mix. Imagine the smoky jazz clubs of the 1940s and 50s, the air alive with the sounds of trumpets and saxophones, pianos and drums, all weaving intricate melodies. Musicians like Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington and Ella Fitzgerald pushed the boundaries of music, their improvisation skills captivating audiences. Rock and roll absorbed this spirit of improvisation. It embraced the energy, the spontaneity, the willingness to break free from convention. This fusion of blues and jazz, of raw emotion and technical mastery, laid the foundation for something truly extraordinary. The king and the architect Elvis and Chuck Berry. And then came the icons, the pioneers who took these raw ingredients and molded them into what we now know as rock and roll. They were the trailblazers, the ones who dared to push boundaries and create something entirely new. Elvis Presley, the charismatic young man from Mississippi, burst onto the scene with his electrifying stage presence. His performances were unlike anything the world had seen before, filled with energy, passion, and a raw magnetism that drew people in. His fusion of country, gospel, and rhythm and blues created a sound that was both familiar and entirely new. It was a blend that spoke to a wide audience, crossing racial and cultural lines in a way that was revolutionary for the time. And then there was his undeniable sex appeal. Elvis's good looks and provocative dance moves made him a sensation, especially among young women. He became a symbol of youthful rebellion and sexual freedom. Elvis's music, from the hip-shaking rhythms of Hound Dog, which had audiences dancing in the aisles, to the soulful balladry of Love Me Tender, which showcased his softer, more romantic side, captivated a generation. His versatility as an artist allowed him to connect with a wide range of listeners. He became a global phenomenon, challenging social norms and expectations at every turn. His influence extended far beyond music, impacting fashion, attitudes, and even language. Elvis ignited a cultural firestorm, becoming a lightning rod for controversy. His performances were often deemed too provocative, and he faced significant backlash from conservative segments of society. Yet this only fueled his popularity, making him an even more potent symbol of change. Then there was Chuck Berry, the guitar virtuoso whose infectious riffs and clever lyrics defined the sound of early rock. Berry was a master storyteller, weaving tales of teenage life, love, and rebellion into his songs. His guitar playing was revolutionary, characterized by its speed, precision, and inventiveness. Berry's riffs became the blueprint for countless rock songs that followed, and his influence can still be heard in music today. Berry's music was about teenage life, about cars and girls, about the joys and struggles of growing up. His songs captured the spirit of a generation eager to break free from the constraints of society and forge their own path. His lyrics resonated with young people who saw themselves in his stories. Berry's music was a celebration of youth and freedom, and it inspired countless teenagers to pick up guitars and start their own bands. His songs, like Johnny B. Good and Roll Over Beethoven, became anthems for a generation eager to embrace the new and the rebellious spirit of rock and roll. These tracks were not just songs, they were declarations of independence and self-expression. Berry's performances were electrifying, filled with energy and showmanship. He had a unique ability to connect with his audience, making every concert an unforgettable experience. Together, Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry laid the foundation for rock and roll, creating a sound and a culture that would influence generations to come. Their music was more than just entertainment, it was a movement, a revolution that changed the world forever. Shaking things up. The cultural impact of early rock. The rise of rock and roll was more than just a musical phenomenon, it was a cultural earthquake that shook the foundations of society. Here was a music that spoke directly to young people, that expressed their hopes and dreams, their frustrations and anxieties. Rock and roll challenged the status quo, breaking down racial barriers, blurring musical boundaries, and giving a voice to a generation yearning for something more. It was met with both adoration and resistance. Parents worried about its corrupting influence, while religious leaders condemned its demonic rhythms. But for young people, rock and roll was a breath of fresh air, a symbol of freedom and rebellion. Across the pond, the British invasion. Just as rock and roll began to find its footing in America, a new wave of British artists emerged, ready to take the world by storm. The British invasion, as it came to be known, injected new energy and innovation into the genre, further solidifying rock's place in the global consciousness. Bands like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Who and the Kinks brought their own unique styles and influences to the table. They drew inspiration from American blues and rock and roll, but added their own distinct British flair. The British invasion brought a sense of sophistication and artistry to rock, expanding its musical vocabulary and pushing the boundaries of songwriting and studio production. The Beatles, a revolution in harmony. At the forefront of the British invasion were the Beatles, four lads from Liverpool who would go on to become the biggest band in the world. John, Paul, George and Ringo, their music was a revelation, a masterful blend of melody, harmony and lyrical depth. From the catchy pop sensibilities of Love Me Do to the psychedelic experimentation of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the Beatles continuously evolved, pushing the creative envelope and inspiring countless artists. Their influence on music, culture, and even fashion was profound and far-reaching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay in the loop. Rock on, rockers!